individually. And I'm going to start off with Senator Sokola. What does the Joint Finance Committee do and how does it function? You have 3 to 4 minutes for this question.
So the Joint Finance Committee, which Tizzy is on, she's actually probably even as good to answer this as I am. They review the GRB, or Governor's Recommended Budget. That budget was based on the December Delaware Financial Advisory Council revenue estimates. The governor has to build a budget that has to meet certain constitutional requirements, submit it. The Joint Finance Committee reviews each by agency, and then we go to work again on legislation, and a number of the things that have already been introduced and a number of things that will be introduced are not part of the governor's recommended budget. So they're going to make decisions about if anything needs to be cut, if anything needs to be added. But we also have a couple of variables coming up. One of them is the next Delaware Financial Advisory Council revenue estimates this month. I believe it's on the 15th. And then we still have a couple of more until June, which is the one that is official for the actual budget that's adopted by June 30th. We've been able to get a couple of budgets adopted earlier than that in recent years, and I hope we can get that done early this year too. But there's a number of things that aren't in the governor's recommended budget that I know I feel pretty strongly about, and I know some of the other members of the joint committee feel also. But it's a very open and transparent process, and this year we had some of the biggest numbers of people observing the Joint Finance Committee proceedings during the month of February. And they did also have opportunity to have input into those hearings. People who could not make that time frame could submit input in writing or by email, and the committee is supposed to review those items of input as well. Is that good enough? Did I meet the time?
Yes, yeah. And thank you, Senator. Next question is for Senator Lockman, and it is, what impact do any of the proposed economic justice bills have on the Joint Finance Committee's business this year? And you have 3 minutes for this question.
Thank you very much, Vivian, and good evening, Delaware United and everyone. It's great to be here. I must say, I think it's, from my vantage point, it's probably a little bit soon to say. As Senator Sokola laid out really clearly, we're in our early stages, really, in terms of our review of the governor's recommended budget at this point. So we just finished, spending the month of February really digging into all of those agency budgets and some of their additional requests, which aren't part of the governor's recommended budget, and then hearing from the public in terms of places that they would like to see that go further, or this or that being a little bit different, hearing folks advocate for different elements of that. So we're really just at that sort of early stage, and I think where you're going to really start to see the impact of some of the legislative priorities, particularly some of the economic justice oriented ones, whether it might be, a $15 minimum wage and things like that, coming into play as those bills make it to the floor, and we find out whether or not we're able to get them over the finish line. So then we'll have to grapple with that as a committee as that begins to happen. So we're just now, we had our first couple of weeks of session in January. We're just about to go back in next week. So we'll start to see a lot more action in terms of those pieces of legislation coming to fruition. And so I think probably in the markup, which is the next big phase for joint finance, happens in May. I can get you guys the exact dates, but that's when all the members of the committee will be diving back into the budget to look at various things that have happened. So how projections have changed, what bills we've passed and the fiscal notes that come with them, And then, of course, I think we all have, and our colleagues have, other types of priorities that we're working to integrate into that budget. So it's a little premature to say exactly what the impact will have. Obviously, it will have an impact. I think there's many different things that we would all like to do, and many very worthy areas of investment, you know, in the current budget that we'd like to increase. So it'll be a big balancing act, and I'm sure there will be some trade-offs. But if we pass a bill, we will have to find a way to fund that. So stay tuned, I guess I would say, and certainly would welcome folks reaching out to us with your thoughts on what you hope to see happen on all fronts of the budget. You can email us, and would really encourage you to tune in for those proceedings, and join us, give public comments, send us your emails. But so coming soon, we'll start to see some of those budget priorities shift as bills pass and we dig in.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is also for you. It is, what are the next steps for the committee now that the hearings are over?
Mhm.
And there's 3-minute time limit on that question.
So I got into it a little bit. The next big public piece is going to be the markup. Another piece that I didn't get into is that, you know, one of the responsibilities of the Joint Finance Committee is to make decisions around grant and aid. So for folks who aren't familiar with the grant and aid process, that's the opportunity that nonprofits have to request funds to do the great work that they do in our communities. It's sort of split into a lot of different categories. There's funds that flow to things like our senior centers, you know, first responders and fire departments and things like that. And then we have these more discrete areas for different nonprofits. So internally, as a committee, we each get like assigned an area of focus to review what requests came in, and that deadline was at the end of last year. So for those of you who weren't familiar with the grant and aid process and might participate in a nonprofit that would be interested in moving forward, you want to look to like October to December in terms of understanding how that process flows and being able to participate in it. So we will each, I think in pairs, take responsibility for a category to review the asks that we received and make our recommendations to the broader committee about any changes to be made there. And of course, that will also factor in as we go into markup. And it's my first time at the JFC rodeo, so I'm still learning all of these stages along with you guys. But it's a fantastic process, great way to learn how we as a state do what we do, and you know, follow the money. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Senator Lockman.
Thank you.
And the next question is for Senator Townsend. Given the policies that have already been introduced, what is still to come during the second half of the year? And you have 3 minutes to answer that question.
Many things are still to come. I'll just start rattling off some, I guess, but paid family leave, which Senator Sarah McBride, who's on the call here with us, is championing, is there. We have gun safety bills that'll be championed, particularly by Senator Lockman and Senator Sokola. There are a question of whether or not we add additional tax brackets over on the House side starts there. The marijuana legalization, a variety of criminal justice reform efforts led by Senator Darius Brown and myself in the Senate. Just coming to mind, there's so many. I know Representative Melissa Minor Brown and Senator Pinckney, who's on the call with us tonight, are taking a look at improvements to a variety of different concerning issues in the corrections process. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of things because we have a whole lot teed up, and so it's going to be an exciting session. But we're about like 20% of the way through the session, and there's a whole lot more to do, and looking forward to getting back into session next week on Tuesday to start that process.
Thank you, Senator Townsend. And our next question is going to start with Sokola, and then each of the speakers can answer. And it is, what would you say is the most effective way people can still push for what they believe in when they cannot come down to Dover due to the legislature being shut down?
That's a great question. And the good news is we're getting, as I said earlier, probably more input than we have in the past. The committee hearings in January had far higher participation than what we have had in the past. So you can participate by being in the committee hearing, but you may only get 2 or 3 minutes to speak there. And we all are open and transparent and available. And I like getting input and feedback. And when we do things, the general public has ideas too. And often I find that your ideas improve what I try to do. So, so I feel that it's important to email, text message, phone call. All of those are fair game. Paul Bomback and I have had Facebook Lives. I had one last night with Senator Pinckney that was terrific, and we had some nice questions on that. But there's a lot of opportunities, and I feel like my colleagues have made a good faith effort to try to be accessible and available. And just reach out to us, please.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I could add a little bit to that, if I may, Senator Townsend. I think, certainly attending committee hearings, attending, when we're in session, those are all great opportunities to be present and to be watching what's going on. I would say don't forget that we also have some really interesting task forces and other types of things that aren't just part of that normal committee and session rotation, where I think some fantastic policy conversations are happening, and you have an opportunity to weigh in at that stage when we're, they're like little crucibles of policy ideas where stakeholders are coming together. So please look for those opportunities as well. You can always call those main numbers too, can be good. I will say one of the things during the pandemic is I think it's increased the amount of emails that we're getting, possibly. Maybe that's just me. So sometimes things can, for me at least, can get slowed down there. So love to get phone calls. Love to see folks at our committee and task force meetings. And love to see folks at our community coffees. Oftentimes that's going to be a smaller pool of folks for the folks that represent you, and you can really have an opportunity to have a substantive conversation.
I'll kind of follow up with some of the chat comments because I think they are relevant to the input idea. There's no specific plan right now for the General Assembly to go back in person. The Senator Sokol and Representative Schwarzkopf announced yesterday or earlier this week that although March is planned to be virtual, certainly we are kind of hoping to get back in person soon. That very much relates to the vaccination efforts and the overall spread of COVID in the community. The idea of online meetings or access continuing, particularly for committee hearings past the pandemic, is something we're definitely taking a look at. I would say that people should not expect it to be quite as sort of like literally, personal in terms of seeing everyone's face very close to the screen the way you can in Zoom. And even in the chamber, if we're able to do something in the chamber, I don't think we're talking about having like multiple camera angles that are always going to guarantee that you can see, a great close-up shot of your favorite senator when she or he is speaking. But we'll figure out kind of the balance to strike overall. It is important to note that obviously floor sessions have streamed in terms of audio for quite some time now. So we're taking a look at those items. I also should say that another initiative I should have mentioned as part of what's coming up is a minimum wage increase, which Senator Jack Walsh is leading in the Senate. So that's a big deal as well. And there are plenty of others. Senator Laura Sturgeon is working on a variety of education bills, including codifying the terms of the settlement with the ACLU, among others. So there's a lot going on. I'm still forgetting tons. I know Senator Kyle Gay is on the call with us here, and she's very committed to election reform, and broadly speaking, but particularly making sure that we continue to have very smooth and accessible election frameworks moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I think emails and other kinds of communications, text messages from those who know us. I mean, a lot of people in this call are very involved in the community and very involved in campaigns. So they know us, and it is helpful for people to to reach out and make sure they're in touch with us and let us know what they're thinking. But I think it's also a testament that you don't have to be as much of a campaign guru as some of the people on this call are, and some of you have moved mountains on doorsteps over the past few cycles. I think it's just very much be involved enough for people to know kind of who you are. I just think that level of personal touch does make a difference in a sea of emails and a sea of social media messages. Personally, I find it helpful to see something from someone I know, and that little extra personal touch is certainly helpful. I also see Sarah commenting about getting copies of recordings. I think that's part of what we're taking a look at, is how to try to make sure that that the record is accessible for people to be able to access.
Okay, does anyone else want to chime in? All right, I guess.
One issue we did not talk about that is a big deal this year is redistricting. And unfortunately, there was not a lot of commitment from the last administration at the federal level to get that information. And I'll give them credit. The pandemic put some speed bumps into that too, and it's certainly understandable that they would be a little bit late. But the latest information we got is we will not likely get our final information till the end of September. And so we have a constitutional requirement to do it by the end of June. We're working on the workaround. There's been one time in the last 30 years where it was late. But I expect that we will make a good faith effort to do that and have it done in an open and transparent manner. And we'll do it.
All right, thank you, Senator Sokola. Our next questions are for the freshman legislators, and I'm going to start with Marie Pinckney for this question, and then each freshman senator can take a turn answering it. What was the most surprising thing coming into the legislative session compared to when we had our meet and greet last year?
Thanks, Vivian. Thanks for that question. Hi, everybody, and thanks for putting this together tonight. I thought so long and hard about this question when I saw it, and I promise I have probably the worst and most unexciting answer for it, but I promise my answers will get better as we go along with the questions. And Senator Lockman also kind of validated my answer, so I feel a little bit better. I didn't really go into legislating with too much of a preconceived notion. I wasn't 100% sure what to expect. So the most shocking thing to me has been all of the emails. I thought there were going to be a lot of emails, and it greatly exceeded what I anticipated. So that's probably been the most shocking and unexpected thing. Everything else has just kind of been rolling with the punches. Like I said, I didn't have too much of a preconceived idea of what to expect. I wanted to not have too much of a preconceived so that I wouldn't be shocked. So the only super shocking thing has just been the amount of emails. So if I have not responded to your emails, I promise it's coming.
So many emails.
Love to have them though.
Is it me or Senator McBride next?
Whichever one of you wants to go first.
Well, I can't see her and I can see myself talking, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk. Sorry, Senator McBride. You can go first for all the other ones. For me, I, like Senator Pinckney, had really not a lot of preconceived notions. That became very apparent to me when at 12:01 at midnight, on election night, someone said to me, "So your job starts today." And I said, "What?" Right? We don't realize how quickly we have to get up to speed. So, I think for me, I had gone into it wanting to be close to the code, wanting to be with the language. I litigate the code. I wanted to fix where I saw there were issues and help others fix where they saw issues. It's been really surprising to me how much of my job isn't that, and how much of my job is about bringing people to the table to even have those conversations. And so I think, whereas I knew there would be barriers to change, I think I've been surprised at not just the Zoom barriers, right? But really, even when you think you share values with people, understanding how folks want to accomplish goals and just how many different ways we can talk about doing that. And sometimes the delays that are caused by that collaboration. And so I was just talking to a friend earlier today, and I think she really was able to put really put a pin in what I was trying to say, which is collaboration is terrific, and we can't do these things without collaboration, but collaboration without leadership is not going to get us to a different place. And so for me, it's been really interesting to find the balance between leading and being assertive and being collaborative, respectful, and thoughtful. And we're never going to get it right every time, but I'm working on it.
I would say a couple things. One, I think the most surprising thing, and it sort of builds off of what Senator Pinckney and Senator Gay said, which is just how much the pace does not let up. I remember prior to the election, I said to someone, they reached out to me and said, can we get drinks? I said, let's do it once things slow down after the election. And the person was like, oh, honey, no, that's not how it's going to work. and then, I thought perhaps once we, get into session, after we get through the first month, maybe it'll slow down a little bit. No, it doesn't. So just the pace and I have never felt more like I'm drinking from a fire hose as I do right now. Something that's top of mind, and this isn't a surprise at all, but something that's really top of mind, there's this old saying that I heard about the US Senate, which was the first 6 months you look around and you go, how the hell did I get here? And after the first 6 months, you look around and you go, how the hell did everyone else get here? And I've had the exact opposite experience of that. Getting to know all of my colleagues, coming in with this incredible freshman class has been such a blessing. Everyone has such incredibly complementary talents. And, we have all been there very much to support one another. Getting to know my other colleagues in the caucus and really understanding their breadth of expertise that all of them have developed in so many different areas. And I'm not just saying this because they're on the call, our leadership team is really spectacular. They are nurturing, they are bold, they are inclusive, they are thoughtful. I can't begin to encapsulate how lucky we are here in Delaware to have the Senate leadership that we do. And so those things have been really top of mind. They're not surprises, but just the incredible quality of colleagues that we all have is really just a wonderful thing to be a part of.
Thank you, everyone. And then the next question is going to start with Senator McBride. And it is, what policies have you been advocating for so far this year? And what issues are you hoping to have introduced during the next segment of the session?
Sure, it's a great question. And I have to sort of keep myself from doing a laundry list of different things here because there's so much to do. I think when we had this town hall back in the fall, one of the things we talked about is how the number of issues on our plates as legislators this session, any one of them could fill an entire legislative session. But this year we've been called to make progress on all of those issues. And Senator Townsend sort of outlining some of the priorities that the caucus has and some of the issues that we'll be dealing with in the next parts of session, I think summarized as the caucus where we're going. For me personally, I've really tried to dive into my work as the new chair of the Senate Health Committee, trying to fill the huge shoes that Senator Townsend leaves in that role. Just recently, we both introduced legislation that will seek to expand the number of enhance the state's ability to attract dentists to our state. Delaware's 47th in the nation when it comes to access to dental care. Delawareans are twice as likely as the national average to live in an area where there's a shortage of dental care. So we just recently introduced legislation to enhance the state's capacity to hire dentists and dental providers in underserved communities. I just introduced legislation that provides basic non-discrimination protections for people based on religion in our equal accommodations laws, so that no one, regardless of how or if they worship, is fearing discrimination when they go out to get goods or get services that they need. That's, I think, particularly important at a time where we have seen a rise in religion-based hate crimes in our country. I'm working with Senator Lockman and Senator Sturgeon on legislation around news literacy and digital citizenship. I think one of the things we've seen is that the lack of comprehensive access to social studies and civics is really a major threat to our democracy. And in order for us to combat the spread and threat of fake and fraudulent news, we really have to make sure that all of us are better prepared to be discerning consumers of news and information. And so we're working on legislation around digital citizenship and news literacy. I'm working on legislation with Representative Griffith around expanding Medicaid access to underserved communities. I'm working with a number of my colleagues to try to better support youth in and aging out of foster care, to be able to get driver's license so that they can get to their employment and get a job. And then, of course, Senator Townsend mentioned the work that I'm doing on paid family and medical leave that I am so excited to be working with Delaware United on. I have been meeting with stakeholders left and right over the last few months, and will continue to do so in the weeks ahead as we draft and introduce legislation and add Delaware to the 9 states plus DC that have paid family and medical leave for all workers. So that's my laundry list that I couldn't avoid doing.
Am I next or Kyle? Okay.
You can be next.
Okay, so before break, one of the bigger things that I worked on and was really excited about was a resolution declaring gun violence as a public health crisis. I know it's just a resolution, but I was really excited about that one because it makes us think about gun violence first and foremost, and really prioritize it. And it has the commitment of the Senate, and soon to be hoping the House, that will really work on and focus on legislation that will end gun violence. And I wanted it to be a focus of a public health crisis, because it's not enough for us to just do gun bills. Like, I want to make sure that we're actually also targeting like root cause issues of gun violence. So focusing on making it a public health crisis, I think, is the first step to doing that. And then there's plenty more to come. I'm also working on introducing working on introducing the CDC recommendations for reducing gun violence. Interesting choice of who I'll be working with on that one, but Senator Lawson introduced the bill, so we'll be riding it out together and getting it done. And we have a better chance of getting it through if we have bipartisan support, right? So we'll see how that one goes. Excited about that one. I also worked with Representative Minor Brown in the House to create HB 37, which provides public health crises credits for persons who are incarcerated, and have served time during the pandemic, that can give them up to a year off of their sentence. So that one made it through Corrections Committee in the House, and will be going to the floor for a vote and then coming over to us. Working with Rep. Longhurst on HB 100 that will fund mental health providers in elementary schools. So that will be going for a vote next week. Let's see, for housing, Senator Townsend was gracious enough to allow me to work on the Housing Bill of Rights that he worked on last year. So we'll be working on that coming up very soon. I'm really excited about that one. And it will protect the rights of people who are experiencing homelessness, to make sure that their rights are protected and reserved, and that they're not discriminated against just because of their housing circumstances. Working with Senator Lockman on a source of income bill that will stop discrimination for types of income that people have, so that they're able to access public housing. Very excited about that. Also working on birth control access. So I will hopefully soon be introducing a bill that will allow pharmacists to prescribe birth control, and where birthing persons can go to their pharmacy and get their prescription and receive their birth control right at the pharmacy, to help increase access to birth control. Also working with Senator Sturgeon on an SRO kind of reform bill, just kind of looking differently at how we use SROs and some accountability for them so that they are, since it doesn't quite seem like everyone's ready to remove them from schools, it will at least improve the role that they serve. And actually I see Dan Seligman on here who's also working with us on that one. So very excited about that. And also working with Rep. Benson in the House to kind of revitalize the educator loan repayment bill in a way that encourages us to have more educators of color throughout the state. So that is my laundry list, and I'll stop there. There's probably other things that I'm forgetting, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Senator Gay.
Absolutely. I have been working on actual laundry and also trying to get my legislative liaisons in the House to agree to an 8 o'clock bedtime. Those initiatives have been failing recently, but in the actual Senate, I am working on a host of different issues. Again, trying to avoid the laundry list of items, but trying to kind of pull back a little bit and talk about approach and talk about kind of areas of improvement that I see. And if anyone has questions about specific stuff that we put out there, please always reach out. I want to talk about policy all the time. From a kind of where we are right now kind of lens, we have the vaccine issues, we have COVID issues, we also have the economic issues that we are dealing with. And so being a millennial, being a parent of young children, not having seen necessarily a lot of folks like me down in Dover, I really feel an obligation to bring that lived experience to the Senate and start to talk about what it means for families with dual incomes, what it means for folks out there working, trying to raise their kids, and what Delaware is doing to make our state a place where people can come and succeed and raise a family. And as you know, with anything that touches all kinds of different areas. And so one of the key issues for me is, how are we going to help families recover from this pandemic? And a lot of those policies are policies that my colleagues are talking about. You heard about paid family medical leave. I think I've been down in Dover. We started the conversation 2015, even beforehand, on what family leave looks like, and for the state, and the idea of expanding those policies, not only the types of policies, but the number of people that they apply to across our state is really what we need, I think, as we continue to recover. Another huge issue for me is going to be early childhood education, making sure that we are supporting families with comprehensive 0 through 5 care and education, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of zip code, regardless of race and gender. And so I think that that's going to be a long time coming. I recognize that. But I think what we are doing now successfully, and what you'll see in the bills that are being introduced shortly, are laying the groundwork to build a system that will work for Delaware and for Delaware families. And so that is preparing the workforce, that is preparing and expanding programs, and that is increasing funding gradually and making sure we meet the highest needs first. As far as the vaccine, like I said, the other main issue, I think a lot of what we do in that area is not going to be legislative, but it's just as important. And every single one of your legislators has been working with constituents to connect those in need to the vaccine, to be the pathway and the connection to the state agencies for unemployment benefits, to make, from my side, I've had volunteers calling folks who don't have access to internet or email to make sure that they can also have access to the vaccine. So there's a lot we can do as in our communities as much as we are doing legislatively. The only other sides I'll talk about, because again, I promise not a laundry list, but I could get there easily, is where I'm working on with the committees. So I'm really have the honor to work on elections and sunset. And as Senator Townsend said, for me, it's about making sure that our access to the polls is there, that we have safe, secure and elections, and that we have honestly a campaign finance system that works for everyone and that makes it possible for as many people to run for office as possible. And you'll see a bill coming through that would allow parents to pay for childcare related to their campaign, which I think is important, especially, as we see more and more parents of young children wanting to be part of representing their communities. And on the sunset side, I encourage anyone who has any complaints about boards, commissions, agencies, parts of the state, please tell me, because we have such an amazing tool in legislative oversight, not just to get rid of things, but to make them better. And Senator Pinckney and I are having a blast trying to, make our state run more efficiently and work for us. And so as much as we have big ideas about the things we want to add, let's make sure that our state is doing a good job at the things we've already taken on. So I can't wait to connect with you all on that as well.
Well, thank you, Senator Gay, and the other senators that answered that question. My next question is also for Senator Gay, and it is, how has the reality of working in Legislative Hall changed, and what issues did you focus on first?
How has the reality of working in Legislative Hall changed? I've not been in Legislative Hall since I was elected. So nothing much has changed. I'm still virtually there. Hopefully that's what you meant by the question. My mistake if not. And what issues have I focused on first? I focused on, like I said, early ed first, was at JFC arguing for that, arguing for additional funding. Honestly, what I focused on first, and Dustin and I talked about this a little bit, is bringing everything that I advocated for on the outside. I now am putting that front and center as a legislator and hoping to be that advocate on the inside as well. So some of those things, like I mentioned, are the bill that would allow childcare to be paid for with campaign funds when it's connected to the campaign activities. I know someone mentioned, I just was looking at the comments, HB 20, which, I was down in the committee hearing, banging the table saying we need this bill. And now I have the amazing privilege of being able to introduce it as the prime sponsor in the Senate. So, this is really, I think, shows how we can be advocates and how we can make sure that we keep that kind of tenacity in the hall when we're there. And so, yeah, again, I'm loath to do the laundry list, but if it's not clear, the three of us and Spiros too, we want to do all the things and we want to work with all the people and we want to just make it so that we are efficient and getting things done. And I can't wait really to find the new things that are coming. I mean, things that I had not had on my radar, like data privacy. A wonderful colleague in the House brought to me and has really demonstrated to me why this is a need, right? And so here I am coming to issues. And so I guess what's first is not always most important. It's kind of, we have to triage based on what we can get done. And sorry, I'm the same color as my background. So sometimes the Zoom goes off, but anyway, I can't wait till the breakout so we can talk the nitty gritty. But again, anything you see coming out of Dover that has my name on it, please contact me and let's talk about it, because I would love to understand how you all can interact to amplify some of these really important issues that the three of us have identified.
Thank you. Senator McBride?
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. I see Senator Townsend in here in the chats calling me out for taking his office in legislative hall. He got an upgrade though. He's got a nice corner office now.
It wasn't so much you took over my office, it's that you just my possessions are somewhere in a box somewhere.
Well, you took a while to clean out your office. I'm just saying. I think one of the things that is most challenging, I think all of us, when we ran, we had very clear priorities. And I think one of the great things is seeing how clearly all of the freshmen are really sticking to the messages and the promises they made during the course of the campaign, and went in with a clear vision and a clear agenda. And I think we need more of that vision, I think, in Delaware politics. And that's one of the reasons why I love our leadership team so much, is that I think all of us have this clear sense of what we want to see Delaware be. And so I think all of us have come in really committed to seeing through the promises that we made during the course of the campaign. So many of you live in my district and saw my mail pieces on paid family and medical leave. And so that's certainly something I'm committed to. But I think the challenge is that you see all of these issues coming to you every single day, and it's hard not to say, and I want to work on that, and I want to work on that, and I want to work on that. That needs to be addressed. And so that's certainly a challenge. I think for all of us who are really sort of motivated, compassionate people, because it's hard not to have your empathy just tapped into in every single meeting, and want to say that needs to be my new priority. And so really trying to focus yourself and recognize that if you try to prioritize everything, you end up getting nothing done. And that's certainly one of the biggest challenges, I think, being in Legislative Hall now, virtually, in some form.
Thank you, Senator Pink.
Yeah. Yes. So Dustin, I know you clarified your question in the chat, but now that I know Sarah's out there boxing up Senator Townsend's things, I'm wondering how upset Senator Ennis would be if I kind of moved into my office as well. But I always love going after Sarah because I always feel like I can just kind of say ditto everything she said. It's totally the answer. There's just this desire to do all of the things, and it's like not possible. I think I was just texting Senator Lockman the other day, and Senator Townsend actually, that like every time I start working on an issue, I find another issue with inside of that issue, and I like start going down that rabbit hole. So I'm currently spread across like 30 different rabbit holes right now, and not really sure where I'm going to come out, but figuring it out. I think that it has kind of, the one thing that I think has kind of shifted my priorities is, as we've already talked about how amazing our leadership team is, all of us as freshmen are chairing committees, which is amazing. And so since I've had the honor and privilege of chairing corrections and public safety, that's really been on the forefront of my mind. So that has kind of been taking up a lot of my spaces, like how do we improve the monster that is the DOC. How do we make it so that, people feel like their family members are being taken care of, that their family members are not being forgotten in the middle of a pandemic while they are not really able to kind of fend for themselves. So that has really kind of taken over my mind, and making sure that I'm doing justice to corrections and public safety as the chair of that committee. And I think something else that has also been a blessing with having my fellow freshmen as chairs, it's like, as much as I want to focus on everything, I know that all of the other things are also left in good hands. So whatever I don't get to take up in my own hands, I know that Senator McBride is going to go all in on the healthcare things. I know that Senator Gay, excuse me, is going all in on elections things. And it's really exciting to know that even though I cannot take on everything as much as I would like to believe that I can, because I'm secretly Superwoman, but I'm totally not, the balls won't get dropped because I have amazing colleagues who are very much taking on all of the things that are a concern to me. And because a lot of our desires are so aligned and our values are aligned, I know that they're being done well, and I have less to worry about than I thought I would.
Can I just quickly amplify what Senator Pinckney said, in the sense that we have a trust, I think, and I think that is really important, because, I will say I came into this with a lot of ideas about corrections, and the relief in talking to someone who shares that, right? And like the idea that I can go away and focus and get my head in the code over here and know that Senator Pinckney shares my values somewhere else, it makes me feel more empowered. You know, it makes me as a prior advocate feel like I am working alongside people who understand what that means and why things are so important to me. So I think, you know, I have to amplify that and put an exclamation point on it, because without trust, our caucus is not going to function well. And I have so much trust and feel secure in becoming a leader where I need to be, and in playing a role of support to those without even question sometimes, because I trust where they're coming from, I trust their intentions, and I know I share their values.
It's getting real
Thank
mushy
you.
around here, you guys.
I love my job.
Thank you, everyone, for your input. Our final question starts with Marie, and it is, what do you feel, in your experience thus far, is the most effective method of advocacy, and what seems to really get through and get your attention as a freshman legislator in the COVID era?
Awesome question. I think personally for me, the most effective form of advocacy comes in data, only because I'm a social worker. So I've moved past the point of where I need to, bear with me while I say this and make it make sense and not sound insensitive. I no longer find myself in a space where I need people to tell me their trauma. I don't need to hear people's traumatic stories and how failure and systems impact people's lives, because I've seen it and lived it and advocated through it firsthand. So I want to get to a point where we don't have to ask people to relive their traumatic stories just to move us to a space where we're ready to take action. I honestly find myself sometimes in a space where I don't really need to see the data because we know it's there, but I think having the data gives you the ability to shove it in somebody else's face and say, here, like, you don't want to believe it, but here's the facts, so you can't fight it anymore. I hate to continue to live in a space where we have to ask people to relive their trauma and essentially re-traumatize people, because that's what happens when you continue to tell your story over and over again, is you're re-traumatizing yourself. And I would love to be in a space where we don't need people to constantly do that. So for me, I love a good one pager that spills out the facts and then allows me to get to work.
Hey, Senator Gay.
I wasn't sure if this question was more about, and apologies, this is what lawyers do, and everyone always yells at me all the time, so it's fine. I wasn't sure if the question was about where I can like how my advocacy, like getting attention as a freshman, or whether how people get my attention as a freshman, but I think the answer is the same, in that I bring my experience to this, and that is as an attorney. And as a litigator, I rarely work with a client who gets 100% of what they want at the end of the day. That's a kind of an introductory comment that I have to tell everyone when I meet with them and when I work with them. And so how I approach litigating is, how do we get to an end where we can be happy with the result, we can live with the result. And so when I think about legislation, I know I'm always honest with my clients about where we can go and where we can't, about where we can take risks and where we can't. And when I talk to advocates who bring that perspective, who are honest with me about where we have positives and negatives, where it's going to be hard, and where we can adjust if needed, that's incredibly valuable information to me, because that allows me to advocate better for them in the hall, in the closed meetings. I also feel that that has benefited me as a legislator in the space that, not even just in legislation, when I'm honest with my colleagues about understanding that I'm not going to get $150 million for universal pre-K next year, right? When you are honest with people and you show kind of a real world appreciation for the issues that they're facing as well, I think that can demonstrate to people that you are not, that you have integrity, but you also can work with them. They can work with you because they know that you are going to hear them and that you aren't just thinking about your problem all the time. I've especially seen it work really well in the community. Had amazing opportunities even through COVID to connect with people in the community, but there have been conflicts. Right now, there is a big land use conflict in my district. And I've really found that bringing people to the table and talking honestly about wins and loses, pros and cons, it shouldn't be refreshing to people, but it is. And so I really hope that we can continue to have more honest conversations in Leg Hall, because the dances, they waste my time. I don't have time for the dances. I just want to know, are we going to get this done or not? And sometimes there's things you can't see it or foresee. But the more we can work together on a level playing field and be honest with one another, I think we're just going to be more effective, remembering that the end game is to do better for the people of Delaware and not to make one person or another person look great or feel the pain or whatever it is. So while I do appreciate some aspects of the Delaware way, I think that there's a lot of momentum in legislating a little bit differently down in Dover. And I hope that we can harness that and move in a different direction too.
All right, thank you, Senator Gay. And now to Senator McBride.
Once again, as we all have, I think, said multiple times, ditto to everything that Senator Pinckney and Senator Gay said. I think two things come to my mind. One, building off of what Senator Gay said, specifically as it relates to sort of my relationship with advocates. I really think the best advocacy is knowing who your audience is, right? And the conversation with me is going to be different than the conversation with another senator who may not be as bought in on a concept. I really hope for advocates and activists to be thought partners in the solution and strategy crafting, and not just laying out the entire problem the whole time. I think sometimes we get so consumed in proving the problem that we don't leave enough time for the actual solutions and the actual discussion around strategy. And so knowing that, like, okay, let's spend 20% of the time on the problem and 80% of the time on the solution rather than the reverse. And I think sometimes we end up seeing the reverse in meetings. Beyond that, I think the most effective form of advocacy is really the work that Delaware United is doing to put voices behind and support behind, rather, legislation that's coming before us. I mean, people do take notice when they're getting a ton of emails, especially if those emails in some ways are personalized, not just form emails left and right. But people take notice when constituents in particular are reaching out to them about an issue. That people power is incredibly helpful in getting our policies over the finish line. One of the things that I think some of the freshmen and I have talked about is that the moneyed interests are well represented in Legislative Hall, right? They can afford professional lobbyists. We need to make sure that when we're having these discussions, we are having all of the voices at the table, all of the perspectives at the table. And that requires organizations like Delaware United lifting up and amplifying the voices of real people who don't have the money to hire a lobbyist, who don't necessarily have a business or an organization to hire a lobbyist, but for whom the policies that we're debating are personal and make a world of difference. And they have a very real stake in those getting over the finish line. And so I think, at the end of the day, beyond how to effectively engage with the six of us, the best way to advocate is to do what you all are doing and to get that people power behind the legislation that we're debating and to make sure that all of the voices are truly represented in those discussions in Legislative Hall.
Thank you to everyone. I'm going to hand this back over to Dustin for the breakout rooms.
Great job, Vivian.
Yes, second. Not that we're imposing Robert's rules now, but I second that motion. Anyway, so thank you to our legislators for joining us for this first section. Now we are going to move into our breakout rooms, which is where you all get to participate a little bit more directly with the legislators and ask more kind of policy-centric questions We've heard more about advocacy efforts and how to be effective there and how the General Assembly works in these first parts here to help those budding advocates that are just coming into the process. Mike, to answer your question, and I think I'll speak for the legislators here, always add your message on these tools before what's already printed. You want your message to be the first thing they read. We provide data and background in our Action Network letter campaigns that's we think will be helpful to legislators, but we really want you to edit those and put in your spin and what makes this so important to you. And that's why we always allow people to edit our letter campaigns, even if sometimes we know that some people use them, delete what we're trying to say and then try to say the exact opposite, but that's the nature of the beast. But at any rate, so this is the part why it's very important that you updated your Zoom. If you did, you will actually be able to select which breakout room you want to go into. I won't have to put you there. If you didn't, I'll give you a chance to unmute yourself or chat me which breakout room you want to go into. Just a reminder, the breakout rooms are named by who's going to be in them and kind of what issues generally they have the expertise to speak to. So pay attention to the titles of the breakout rooms. That'll help guide your choice. Just as a reminder, make sure that you're being cordial and everything. The moderators in the breakout rooms are also hosts. So if things get crazy, they will have the ability to eject people, but we got a great group tonight, so I don't foresee that being a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms now. Our legislators are already assigned to their rooms. And I'm going to allow people to unmute themselves in case you did not update, but please mute yourself if you're not speaking in the breakout rooms. But if you did not update and you want me to assign you to a breakout room, you can chat it or just come off mute and I'll put you where you want to be.